Obviously, there's been a lot of spaceships in Doctor Who's history, though not a massive number in the Dudley Simpson era. For example, the Space Pirates, Troughton's penultimate story, is Simpson's 11th score for the series, but his first real chance to create a spaceship theme. In addition, because much of the Pertwee era was based on Earth, there just weren't a lot of ships flying around, so Frontier in Space was actually an uncommon opportunity. The Tom Baker era has the most representation, but it's still just 4 stories out of 6 seasons. Of course, I was looking for a specific musical character as well, so not every space-related track was right for the suite. For example, I considered the season 13 story, Planet of Evil, where the Marestran ship is seen approaching Zeta Minor mid-part 1. The track is nebulous and definitely lacks a distinct theme, so I ruled it out pretty quickly. I had the idea of opening the suite with the opening of season 15's Underworld, part 1. Here, the bleak emptiness of space, no ship in sight actually, is given a stark, mysterious soundtrack. I went so far as to transcribe it, but found that it simply failed to come off effectively on the piano. The 7 clips that made it aboard the suite, with one clear exception, have a common musical thread to connect them: E natural. That note is an important foundational one in these clips. Either the theme can be analyzed in a key of E, or that pitch has an important harmonic function, as a prominent bass note, for example. So, off we go. The opening strains of the suite, calm, heroic, with a touch of loneliness, are from The Space Pirates, one of 2 stories newly represented in the project in this piece. Simpson's score is perhaps not as successful as the previous story, The Seeds of Death, but to be fair, its status as a largely missing story makes it far less familiar, even for me. One thing it definitely is: novel. Orchestrated for 4 musicians, soprano voice, oboe, electric harpsichord and oscillated piano, played by the composer, and percussion, it is utterly unique in Simpson's Doctor Who output. As was standard at the time, the director reused tracks as they wished, and so this Space Corps theme is heard 8 times over the 6 episodes, although the complete version that I play, consisting of the full melody plus a shortened repeat, isn't heard until the final episode. Opening with an undulating suspended chord on, E natural, a soprano and oboe duet performs the harmonized melody. In the first measure, the oboe's F natural suggests a bit of the Phrygian mode, but when both lines leap up and resolve away from each other to a perfect fifth, the chord underneath shifts to A major, yet the natural bass remains steadfast. A distinctive element of this melody is several uses of an appoggiatura. That's a musical term for when unresolved melodic notes land on the beat, then resolve after. Many times, the resolution itself lands on the beat, hence the distinction. Basically, a nice bit of tension and release there. As the melody moves on, the accompaniment returns to its suspended harmony. Note how the 2 melodic lines pull towards, then push away from each other, as where the oboe twice harmonizes a mere whole step away from the soprano, resolving by step down. Note also, despite the A major harmony, the melodies always use A minor sounds. When the soprano reaches a peak B natural and leaps down to E natural, there's a rich harmonic shift to A minor with added 6th, F sharp. That 6th beautifully steps up to the major 7th G sharp before sinking back. Difficult to hear on the soundtrack, this inner voice movement is so lovely I was actually disappointed that nothing like this happens anywhere else. After this colorful measure, the harmony shifts again, here to a chord hinting at a more traditional progression. This dominant 7th chord with flat 9, F, isn't fulfilled until the second of these 2 measures, when the oboe sounds the major 3rd G sharp. From here, as the melody in the soprano lilts to its resolution, the oboe chromatically steps lower in support. In the final appoggiatura, the harmonized melody resolves to A natural, and for the only time, the bass agrees with it. An A major harmony completes the traditional dominant tonic progression. The track concludes with a 4-measure reprise of the opening phrases. Like much of the music of this time, the tempo here is whatever Simpson thought was right. This separates it from the rest of the suite because, as you know by now, the remaining tracks from 1973 onward have a steady, reliable 120 beats per minute tempo. As always with these puzzle piece suites of mine, the goal is to connect these disparate tracks as smoothly as possible, and the harmony is usually the key, to achieving that goal. Happily, the connection to the next track, the opening music from Nightmare of Eden, really could not have been smoother. E suspended harmony is used yet again. Here, however, the sound is much richer with added colors of the 7th and 9th of E. And the left-hand chord is quintal in nature. Like the Space Pirates, there's a measure of steady pulsing that sets the stage for the melody to begin. In reality, when that horn melody begins, it's clear that Simpson is thinking in the key of B minor, but gives the music a heroic, expansive turn by putting E in the bass and substituting E for the minor 3rd D in his melody. The 2-measure long melody, essentially heard 3 times in a row, is notable for its rapid-fire, repeated notes. And, for me, the best way to do that is to alternate fingers with each repetition. At the outset, as well as interspersed between melodic phrases, there is a third element, a high-register twinkling figure played by some electric keyboard, or rather. This was a definite 3-hands problem, as it's heard throughout the actual soundtrack, so I did the best I could. After 4 measures of the pulsing harmony, there is a bold and bright shift to G major. The notes of the melody add luster by remaining unchanged, becoming the 6th, major 7th, and 9th of G. The melody's conclusion is made of a galloping, dotted rhythm centered around B minor, while returning to the colorful E suspended harmony. The twinkling part becomes crucial to this coda, so I must abandon the low register pulses and toss the melody over to the left hand. That's so the twinkles can accompany it in resolving to B major, a lovely surprise. After 2 fairly heroic opening tracks, there next follows 2 rather dark and sinister tracks. Taking advantage of an available smooth transition from B major to B minor, the next track is from Simpson's unintended swan song, The Horns of Nimon. Unlike the other clips, this music is pure atmosphere with no theme or melody. Over a series of parallel minor harmonies, B to D minor, then B to F minor, 2 elements fight for prominence. A duet of horn and bass clarinet play root and fifth, rising and falling in dynamics. Disrupting this is the synthesizer, playing weird tangential minor chords over the D and F minors. These tangents are based a minor 3rd away, but also add the major 7th in a clustered inversion. As if that isn't weird enough, Simpson uses the synth to create an echo effect that not only causes the chords to fade away, but to pulse in an irregular 5/4 rhythm. And there's more. This 5/4 begins in the middle of the beat, making it highly discombobulating at the best of times. Temporarily settling on B flat minor now, a slower pulsing tritone E natural, there it is again, slowly fades, and it too is interrupted by a 5/4 echo, this time formed by a C major chord with an added flat 9. This flat 9 happens to be the minor 3rd of B flat. The coda to this track finds the bass resolving to, oh yes, E natural. A progression from E minor to F minor builds the unease, thanks to the E bass remaining implacable. In order to simulate the steady crescendo that breath instruments are capable of, the E minor is played tremolo on the piano. This distressing harmony segues perfectly into the opening of The Invisible Enemy, the other story newly represented in the project. As the Titan shuttle maneuvers through the asteroid belt, frightening, almost oppressive music inaugurates the story. As with the first two tracks, the stage is set with pre-melody music. A super low bass line alternating between E and D has the unnerving rattle of a contrabass clarinet, maybe filtered through some percussion instrument, maybe, on the soundtrack. I honestly don't know how it was produced, but thankfully the doldrums of the piano have their own rattle. More active here is the horn and clarinet ensemble, pulsing a remarkable chord. Based on E, it's made of the major third, then the root above, and finally the fourth or 11th. This fourth, A, most distressingly, is also displaced an octave, creating that most dissonant interval, a minor ninth, utterly undermining the otherwise happy major third. Above all this discomfort, the synth adds a highly chromatic melody that further subverts the potential warmth of E major. Much like episode 49's Mr. Oak and Mr. Quill, a fair amount of choreography was needed to handle this three-hands passage. Towards the end, the harmony shifts to a no less worrisome augmented chord, and the bass's two-note pattern shifts up a whole step in support of it. The music fades out and takes a breath. Next, during the hurtling asteroid sequence, a series of stings hit, then echo away, as if into a musical funnel. The various electronic echo notes are, I admit, not recreated diligently in this arrangement, but I'm sure that you can see that what I came up with was not only effective, but difficult enough as it is. Each sting is made of root fifth octave in each hand, with echoing repeated notes in between on the root of each particular sting, ending with C sharp, a constant pedal in the super low register. As we focus in on the bridge of the shuttle and its universe-weary crew, Simpson musically zooms in by shifting the harmony and playing it suddenly at a whisper. That harmony is E minor, but the upper structure is E flat or D sharp major. Altogether, this makes E minor major 7, sharp 11. Exquisite. This musical sequence has always captivated me. This E minor harmony provides a perfect pivot to the next sequence, a little less dark, but no less compelling. These are two clips from The Invasion of Time, the first of which is heard both at the opening of Part 1 and near the cliffhanger of Part 2. We start with the opening sequence involving a giant mothership in which we presently discover the Doctor is meeting with unseen alien aggressors. So far, E natural has been a highly important note, but for the first and only time, I can say that this melody is firmly in the key of E minor. Well, for a while. Again, the stage is set by one measure that establishes the alien groove. Above a grounded bass establishing the downbeat, the horn ensemble's lines vacillate between the third and fifth of E minor, and a half step below each of those notes. You'll notice how, in order to make way for the melody, bits of these parts must occasionally be left out. Continuing to describe the harmony for a moment, after 3 measures of E minor, the same patterns, vacillations and all, shift up to the 4 chord A minor. That is, a chord from within the home E minor key. From here, the harmony goes further afield, jumping up by minor thirds, first to C minor, then to E flat or D sharp minor. Note a similar harmonic shift in thirds in episode 37's Tara on Horseback. During the C minor harmony, it's the root and third that vacillates down a half step and back. During the D sharp minor harmony, the vacillation is between the 5th and 6th, and the root and leading tone, in contrary motion, that is. Let us at last speak of the melody, which actually consists of low-register synth notes, I think, doubled 3 octaves above. Alas, this is an impossible three-hands problem, so I decided the low-register notes were the most important. At first, the melody firmly outlines the E minor scale, accentuating the 2nd or 9th F sharp. After ringing on significantly, this resolves through and surrounding E, immediately sinking from F sharp through perfect fifths down to the opening low E. The melody resolves up to C natural, the minor third of the new A minor harmony. After reinforcing this minor third, the melody climbs to E flat, the minor third C minor. Then it climbs similarly to F sharp, the minor third of D sharp minor. Now the music, albeit obliquely, returns to the key of E minor, never resolving there despite sounding like it might. The melody continues rising up. In fact, it has been outlining a octatonic scale. The harmony here confirms F major, though with B natural, the tritone, giving it a Lydian mode twist. Then that F major harmony remains as the music climaxes, with the melody and bass landing squarely on B natural. This could be setting up a 5-1 dominant tonic resolution to E minor, kind of like the Space Pirates did. From here, the horn ensemble continues after the F major harmony disappears. The notes are all of this B octatonic scale, first outlined by the melody alone and confirmed by the final unresolved resolution to B diminished 7 harmony. Segue now to the music of part 4 of the same story, as we get a brief glimpse of the Varden ship preparing to land on Gallifrey, while the Vardens finally reveal their true forms. Beginning with the same melodic flourish as the opening theme, the melody first outlines B minor, then shifts up to C minor. Meanwhile, the harmony enriches this idea by starting on E natural in the bass. This is the exact same harmony, remember, as the opening of Nightmare of Eden. After the melody resolves onto D natural, which is the minor third of B minor, the harmony shifts beautifully down to E flat minor, making the D natural the major 7th. Next, these two measures are essentially transposed up a half step, that is C minor over F bass, resolving down to E minor, major 7. After a short but discrete interval, the coda of the suite returns us to Frontier in Space, the first half of the space opera that would segue into the greatest Dalek attack force ever assembled. See episode 53. Using music that once again opens the episode, this track has unusual provenance. Recall that I talked in episode 49 about existing recordings with segments not used in the program. This is another example, but here I chose to transcribe and use the complete track in my suite. Allow me to expound. In the program, the track fades in midway through the second measure, as the melody is introduced. It fades out after 9 of the suite's 18 total measures, so over half of it is unused here. The music fades out as we enter the ship's bridge for a scene with some establishing dialogue between the 2 crew members. So Simpson's climactic ending was obviously not appropriate at this point. Fair enough. Though, if Simpson could see what he was writing for, post-production and all, one wonders why he didn't write something that ended where the director wanted. Now, a reprise of this track, starting from measure 1 but without the upper melody, is heard about 5 minutes into the episode, with a similar reprise about 8 minutes in. It seems like this was a separate track, deliberately recorded or perhaps available to be played without this melody. Meanwhile, the full opening is finally heard in the middle of episode 5, but again fades out even earlier this time. I am able to speak about all of this because, miracle of miracles, the complete music recorded for episodes 1 and 2 exist to this day, and without it I might not have had as much reason to transcribe this. The track's existence is interesting because it reveals that this particular director treated Simpson's music more flexibly than others around this time. Even though post-production was 2 years old by now, he might as well have been working in the 60s, because he, certainly in some cases, chopped up and edited Simpson's tracks and used them how he wanted. This affected my earlier Frontier transcriptions from episodes 22 and 23, and explains why the last several measures of the suite are never heard in the finished program, but are heard again now. Once again, there are 3 parts to this track. Introducing it is a 2-measure phrase of F naturals, played by the timpani and synth. It repeats several times. Heard just above is a horn duo line made entirely of perfect fourths, as if mimicking the parallelism of certain synth tracks. This starts by forming a quartal harmony above F and continues using notes of B-flat major. The horns end their first phrase on the 3rd and 7th of an F major 7 chord. During this, to ensure that middle line is emphasized properly, the pedal F natural is sometimes played as a single note rather than as an octave. In the second phrase, this horn line is transposed a fourth higher, but resolves noticeably differently, the final chord being D-flat major with the stalwart F in the bass. Switching now to the melody, it begins on a B-flat, the 4th of F, and rises up in staccato steps, resolving on the major 7th, as discussed a moment ago. At the end of this phrase, the melody is answered by a short phrase confirming the F major 7 harmony. Then the melody's second phrase starts on the minor 3rd, overlapping the fourths of the horns. This line steps further up, resolving on a higher A flat. As earlier, this melody is answered by a phrase that reinforces the D-flat major harmony below. Returning now to the horn fourths, they slide up from D-flat major and with the melody create F-flat major, yet with F natural unchanged in the bass. The melody, after agreeing with F-flat major for a moment, settles on a high B-flat, and the horn fourths dodge around before forming G-flat major with the melody. Most distinctively, the bass finally shifts from F natural down to F flat. Good heavens, that F flat is also known as E natural. It really is everywhere. From here, the suite honors the music not heard in the finished program. This F flat embarks on a new, unrepeated rhythmic pulse, but by and large keeps a steady beat. The melody, meanwhile, holds on B flat for 6 measures. Hopefully it doesn't totally disappear in the piano performance. The horn fourths are also held for several measures. The only other activity besides the steady pulsing of the timpani's F flats is a few unanswered replies by the synth, resolving by half step down to the 5th of that G flat major chord. Now, heading towards the conclusion, while the F flat remains steady yet a while, the horn fourths begin to rise up from E flat. The replying melody reflects the horn harmonies, and once again they land on G flat major just before the final resolution. To finish, all 4 parts sound together. The bass suddenly shifts to A flat in fifths and octaves, and this is copied by the horn fourths above. The melody and its response are heard together, and they spread apart somewhat dissonantly in contrary motion. They finally resolve back to a perfect 5th and octave. The sostenuto pedal is used here to keep all the sounds clean and clear, and with it, this final piece of Season 2 lands safely. We know you have a choice in Doctor Who videos and are grateful you chose episode 56, part 2 of the Dudley Simpson is Doctor Who project. Be sure to check out my season 2 epilogue video, which encapsulates the adventures of the past year and gives a glimpse into the future. Many thanks to my Patreon Space Corps, who have braved the spaceways with me to bring these videos to Earth. Join at patreon.com/Jess Jurkovic. Space seems a little less empty thanks to the kind contributions of people like you on coffee.com/Jess Jurkovic, where you can contribute one time whatever you like. Subscribe, like, share, and comment on YouTube.